If you or your child has a irrational fear or phobia, the first thing is you got to take it seriously. Don't dismiss it or make light of it. It's very real, to the person who has it. But the second thing is, don't assume that you can't manage it or control it or even eliminate it. As a kid, I had a irrational fear, and I have it to this day, but I've learned to kind of manage it. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. The thing we have to first start with, though, is distinguishing between a rational, sort of a logical fear, and an irrational fear. So we all have certain fears that are just rational. They make sense. I'd say most people have a fear of snakes. Snakes can be poisonous. If they bite you, they can kill you. Same with spiders. There are black widow spiders and tarantulas and other poisonous spiders that if they bite you, they could paralyze you or kill you. Again, instinctually, it makes sense. Fear of heights. If you're standing on the edge of a building or the edge of a cliff and you fall off, you'll die. So fear of heights it's logical. It's a good thing. So I'm talking about phobias that have sort of no logical reason. The thing that's feared, truly can't hurt you. So it's irrational. And if you go online, there are like dozens of them, of all kinds. Crazy, things you would never imagine people would be afraid of. Crazy except for the people who have them. For them, it's very real. Like paganophobia, fear of facial hair, beards. Xanthophobia, fear of the color yellow. There are actually people who are afraid of yellow. The triggers are yellow flowers, yellow, clothes, signs. Even the word yellow puts some people in a state of fear. Globophobia, fear of balloons. My favorite is hepatopo monstrous sequiptus aliophobia, which is the fear of long words. There are actually people who are afraid of long words. Some of it is associated with public speaking. I thought, that was cruel, naming it something with, many, many letters, super long words, so that the people that have this can't even say it with its proper name. So my phobia is called kumbanophobia. It's to me, I know it's crazy. It's the fear of buttons. And I've had it ever since I was a little kid, as far as I can remember. I don't know if phobia is the right word, because I'm not afraid they're going to hurt me. They just gross me out. They disgust me to the point where they almost make me sick, when I think about them. My mom knew about it. I didn't tell anybody about this. It was kind of embarrassing and weird. I knew it was weird, but my mom would say, I remember her saying to people well, Spencer he doesn't like clothes with buttons. He just doesn't like them. Almost like, I was like some budding fashionista and I had some preference on my wardrobe. It wasn't that at all. So again, I didn't really tell anybody about it. And she just picked for me, mostly, clothes without buttons. But I also knew from a young age that on some level, I had to kind of deal with it. Like when we went to church, we had to wear our suits, suits with a tie and, button-down shirts. And it was I just had to not think about it. I had to kind of learn myself how to manage it because I was just too embarrassed to talk about it. And I didn't even know what to say. I was a little kid. And as I said, to this day, I still have it. Crazy stuff. If I have to wear a shirt with buttons, for work or something, at the end of the day, if I'm going to bed, sometimes I'll just throw my clothes on. There's a bench near my bed. If the side with the buttons is facing up, and I'm ready to go to bed, I turn it over. I don't want them even facing up. And for me, as I said, with the fear of yellow, even the word, I can say it. I could say the word buttons, but even just saying the word kind of makes me kind of grossed out. It's funny. I was this was probably, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago, 20 years ago or so. I was in my law office. I'm a lawyer. I was in my law office. And I shared a suite with other lawyers. My very good friend, who was another lawyer who had an office in that floor, Lucy. At the it was the end of a long day, and she said to me, "Hey, Spencer, want to come with me? I'm just going to go shopping really quick. I'm going to hit one store. You want to just come along?" And I was like, "Yeah, where are you going?" And she goes, she said, "Windsor Buttons." And I said, "Windsor Buttons? What is that?" And she was like, "What? Why? What's the matter?" And she could sense my discomfort, and I actually confessed it to her. I said, I told her about it, and I said, "So what do they? So is that what they? Is that all they sell?" She's like, "No, no. It's like sewing stuff. Like a lot of thread and yarn and fabrics, and yeah, they have some buttons, but that's not like the only thing." I'm like, "All right, fine." So we go to the store. We walk down Washington Street in Boston, head into Windsor Button. She bought some supplies, but as we walked in, there was it was a giant vat of loose buttons. It was huge. And I just kind of and she thought it was funny. I kind of walked by, wouldn't look at it. She paid for her stuff. On our way out, she was walking a few steps ahead of me, and she stopped at the vat, and she turned around. She said, "Spencer," and she dipped her hand in the buttons and just kind of let them sift through her fingers. And it was just I think I ran out screaming, whatever, kind of being a little over dramatic. But anyway, so that's my phobia, and as I said, I have to deal with it. There's times when I just, for work, I'm a lawyer. When I go to court, I've got to wear a suit. But most days if I'm meeting with clients or, now I'm in-house, have meetings, yes, I wear the proper clothing, but I don't like it. I just kind of suck it up. The one thing I'll say is, though, I'm in good company with this one. I've gone online a lot. I really want to understand, what is it? Something about the shape, the feel. Some buttons gross me out more than others. Like the little translucent ones that you have on dress shirts gross me out. But what I found was Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, he had the same phobia. And if you see pictures of him, he always wore it was his work clothes, a black crew neck shirt. So in honor of Mr. Jobs, I'm wearing my black crew neck sweater and feeling very comfortable here. So, all that to say, a lot of people have these irrational phobias. And if your kid has one, what do you do about it, right? That's the question. You start out by, validating their fear, explaining to them that you understand that the fear is real. It's real to them. But that the thing they're afraid of, the thing that they're afraid could happen to them, that it could hurt them, is not real. That, it's kind of imaginary. Almost like, a fear of ghosts. And explain that, a lot of kids are afraid of ghosts, but ghosts aren't real. It's inside their head. And that their phobia is very similar. The fear is real, but whatever it is, if it's globophobia, they're afraid of balloons, that balloons can't hurt them. So, that's the first step. And then I think you got to kind of steer the conversation into letting them know that they have a choice. They can either, work to change their behavior so they don't have this fear anymore, and that they've got to work on that, or they're going to have to just accept their fear, and then they're going to have sort of more limited options in their life. They're just going to be restricted in what they can and can't do. And, obviously you want to move them to choose the former, not the latter, so that they choose to work on changing this, that they want to change it, and tie that to, the fact that requires courage and bravery. And when they go down that road, that you respect them for having the courage to go through this process with you. And then that way, when they do, and they take these steps toward managing this phobia, you praise them for their courage and their bravery and their strength, and you make it about that. As far as the process goes, the main focus just needs to be that you do it in progression. You start with baby steps. If their fear is of balloons, they have globophobia, start with talking about it. Then maybe introducing a picture of a balloon. Then maybe, a balloon that hasn't been blown up, and then you get the point. You kind of take it in steps, one step at a time. And then along the way, you give them praise. You pat them on the back and say, I really like the fact that you're being brave here. I just really respect that. My son Christopher, he has his phobias as well. From the time he was a little kid, his was how things felt on his skin. Lotions, soaps, shampoos, even toothpaste. The smell of it, the feel of it. It was really repulsive to him. And it was an issue. First time it really came to a head was when the kids were in preschool, I got a call from their teacher. Christopher was probably 4 years old. And she said, Christopher's not washing his hands with soap after lunch, and that's just a requirement of the school. Like, the kids have to wash their hands. It's just a health thing, and he's got to do that. So, that day he came home from school, and we talked about it, and really started talking about, like, what bothered him about it, what were some of the issues he had, the smell, the feel of it. And I said, look, here's the thing, like, we got to work on this. Like, you're going to have to use soap, or they're not going to let you go to that school. So I went to the grocery store. I bought maybe 5 different kinds of liquid soaps, and Christopher and my wife Catherine and I sat down, and he got to smell each one, look at them, look at what they look like, felt them, and he picked the one that was least objectionable to him. But we gave that to the school. We never heard about it again. So I hope he was using it. He might have been pretending to use it for all I know. But anyway, we didn't hear about it again. But it's been a lifelong process with Christopher in these sorts of things. To this day, he still doesn't like a lot of soaps and lotions. For me, what's most critical is sunblock. He's out in the sun a lot during the summer, so I constantly remind him the importance of using sunblock. So my wife found this one that he actually doesn't mind so much. It's a spray-on. It's just, for him, it's a lot more tolerable than the goopy lotions that you rub all over yourself. He just he sprays it all over himself. So yeah, and you figure out a way to manage it. And I would say the most important point with your kid as you're trying to get them through this is stay persistent. Don't let them give up. And don't you give up, hang in there. If they have a bad day and you feel like, you just hit a complete, dead end, just call it a day and then start again in a day or two. And the other thing is, and this is maybe the most important point, is, if it doesn't go away and it persists, or if it's the kind of phobia that is debilitating and just gets in the way of their ability just to do their daily things, then you might need to reach out to a professional, a mental health professional that can come in and work with your child. So that's it for today. If you benefited from this video or you want to hear more of these, please do hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you be part of my community, and I would also love to hear what your feedback. What do you agree with, what you don't agree with? So please drop me a comment. So that's it for today. We'll see you next time.